Man is not rational, and the greatest example of this was the COVID panic. If you want to understand how this mass psychosis happened and how to red pill your friends and family about reality, get my free ebook, The Little Book of COVID Red Pills, today at redpillcovid.com. In left-leaning cities across America, stores such as Walgreens are closing their doors. The roots of this crisis began when liberal politicians, concerned that too many black men were being imprisoned for crimes such as shoplifting, drastically reduced the punishments for these crimes. San Francisco, most famously, stopped arresting criminals who shoplifted less than $1,000. Their goal was to reduce the number of men going to prison, and there would be no consequences. But there were consequences, namely that shoplifting cases exploded to the point that stores such as Walgreens are no longer profitable and are closing. Right-leaning people predicted this would happen and see the solution as being obvious, namely, reinstate the punishments. The politicians who made these changes incredibly disagree. As these store closures are happening in communities of color, they blame racism and argue that corporate America has a responsibility to stay.
Mr. Speaker, Walgreens is planning to close yet another pharmacy in the Massachusetts 7th, this time on Warren Street in Roxbury, a community that is 85% Black and Latino. This closure is a part of a larger trend of abandoning low-income communities like the previous closures in Mattapan and Hyde Park, both in the Massachusetts 7th. When a Walgreens leaves a neighborhood, they disrupt the entire community, and they take with them baby formula, diapers, asthma inhalers, life-saving medications, and of course, jobs. These closures are not arbitrary, and they are not innocent. They are life-threatening acts of racial and economic discrimination. Walgreens is a multi-billion-dollar corporation that needs to put their money where their mouth is and stop divesting from Black and brown communities.
What explains these vast differences in viewpoints? The answer lies in how liberals and conservatives interpret the fairness, cheating value of Jonathan Haidt's 6-value moral matrix. Liberals make use of 3, whereas conservatives value all 6. I explain the evolutionary roots of Haidt's moral matrix in a previous video, which I have linked in the description. For our purposes, the key concept to understand is that the human mind is like a giant instinctive elephant ridden by a tiny, rational rider. The rider, which represents your logical mind, likes to think it is in charge and makes decisions. This is an illusion. The reality is that it is the intuitive elephant that is actually running the show and making all of the major decisions. All the rider does is rationalize the elephant's decisions after the fact so that it can pretend its actions make sense. Again, if this sounds confusing to you, watch my previous video. Link in the description. One of the best survival strategies for any species is to work together in herds. The primary difference between 6-value conservative elephants and 3-value liberal ones is that liberal elephants are much more open to interacting with elephants they do not know from other herds. This is why they only value 3 of the 6 moral values, as the 3 they ignore would make them less open and trusting. In order to be so open to others, they have developed an unconstrained view of human nature, which economist Thomas Sowell explains here.
Which brings us to the unconstrained vision. When, again, I'm quoting you, when Rousseau said that man is born free but everywhere in chains, he expressed the essence of the unconstrained vision, in which the fundamental problem is not nature or man, but institutions.
Yes.
Would you explain that one?
Well, he has the notion that, that good things happen naturally. And if they're bad things, it's because institutions, including civilization itself, have made these bad things happen.
This is why liberal elephants and politicians tend to view problems such as high incarceration rates in terms of systems they believe they can change. People are inherently good, so when they err, it must be the fault of a system. They find it very difficult to put the blame on the actions of individuals themselves. Too many black men being arrested? To a liberal elephant, the answer is obvious. Change the system so that arrests are no longer made. That is fair, and it's simple. Conservative elephants, on the other hand, value all six. They are much more concerned with their own herd and are less open to others. They are possessed of the constrained vision of human nature, which Thomas Sowell explains here.
The constrained vision, I'm quoting from A Conflict of Visions, sees the evils of the world as deriving from the limited and unhappy choices available, given the inherent moral and intellectual limitations of human beings, close quote. So the constrained vision understands itself as constrained by the limitations of reality itself.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
In other words, they cannot proceed as so many do, that good things happen automatically, but bad things are somebody's fault.
Got it. Got it. And then to continue here, the constrained vision, again, quoting from A Conflict of Visions, for the amelioration, improvement of the human condition, the constrained vision relies on certain social processes such as moral traditions, the marketplace, or families.
Conservative elephants and politicians see man as a flawed creature who will cheat if allowed. They see this as being not only unfair to the other elephants, but also worry that if the cheating is allowed to continue, it has the potential to put the integrity of the herd at risk. This is what you now see in these communities of color. Cheaters were allowed to prosper, and now, with stores closing, the entire social fabric of the community is at risk. In The Righteous Mind, Jonathan Haidt describes an experiment which demonstrates the importance of the fairness, cheating principle, and what happens to the social fabric when cheating is allowed to go unpunished. In the public goods experiment, students were each given 20 tokens, valued at 10 cents each. All were then placed in isolated cubicles with a computer screen. Over the course of 12 rounds, each student would be randomly placed with another 3 subjects and told they could contribute their tokens to a collective pot. At the end of each round, the pot would be multiplied by 1.6 and then redistributed equally to all 4. So if everyone in a group of 4 invests all 20 of their tokens, the pot will grow from 80 to 128. When the pot is divided, each person will now have 32 tokens. So, by fully committing to the group, each participant gains 12 tokens. However, if a student wished to maximize the amount of tokens he or she earned each round, the best strategy would be to not contribute to the community pot at all. In this scenario, the person who does not contribute, the cheater, will end the round with 44 tokens, whereas the ones that do will get 24. So the cheater gains 24 tokens, whereas those that contributed will only get 4. At the end of each round, the participants can see who contributed and who did not, before being randomly assigned to new groups. What the researchers found was that if nothing is done in subsequent rounds, people will contribute less and less to the pot. This demonstrates how social capital is lost in a society if cheaters are allowed to prosper over time. In the actual experiment, people initially contributed 10 tokens to each round. As the cheaters prospered with no repercussions, people grew less trusting. This resulted in the average number of tokens being contributed falling to 6 by the 6th round. This is a sign of a society losing its social capital and a herd falling apart. After the 6th round, the experimenters added in a new variable. At the end of each round, when the subjects could see who contributed to the group and who didn't, each subject could elect to spend 1 token to punish another by taking 3 of theirs. The punisher would not get to keep the 3 tokens, so it came at a cost. Therefore, If the goal was to maximize your tokens, it made no sense to punish anyone, and yet people did. Throughout the remaining 6 rounds of the experiment, 84% of the participants opted to punish a person at least once. The results from this change were immediate and dramatic, with cooperation skyrocketing. By the end of the 12th round, the average contribution to the pot was 15 tokens. The results were clear. The threat of punishment promotes virtue and helps to increase the social capital of the group. In the absence of punishment, people will behave increasingly selfishly and society will weaken. And this is why, if you're conservative, the reaction of liberals to the shoplifting epidemic and subsequent store closures seems so irrational because it is. Liberal elephants have a very hard time placing blame on individuals, for this literally conflicts with their evolutionary nature. Can these cities turn it around? Personally, I'm not hopeful. When social decay such as this sets in the most productive and energetic people, the people who would contribute to the community pot, tend to leave. It takes a leader with a strong vision to turn things around. New York, under Mayor Rudy Giuliani, did this for a time, but it didn't last. Detroit never turned things around. But that's what I think. What are your thoughts? Can you think of any examples of failing communities reversing course? Leave your comments below and have a great day.
The country, this CVS that we're talking about here in Washington, D.C., it has gone viral in recent months because of videos circulating showing how barren the shelves are. Some customers even telling us they have seen groups of teens walk into the store and run out with merchandise time and time again. It's why this week even the shelves of that store are almost completely empty. We have learned that the store will be closing at the end of February, and customers, even security, saying that they can't keep these shelves stocked because of nonstop theft.
They just grab stuff and run out. Security officer can't, his job is not to chase people, but, you know, as a deterrent, they don't feel deterred in the least bit.
The way I heard they got hit over here, as many times as they did, I really don't blame them.
It was just a matter of time.